Hello, this is Alexander Siddig, and you're listening to Kneel Before Pod, and don't tune out.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello, and welcome to another marvellous edition of Kneel Before Pod. I'm your host, Craig McKenzie, and today we are here to talk about the paradoxically recent, yet upcoming, opening to the new Marvel TV series, The Inhumans, recently given a limited run in IMAX theatres and coming soon to ABC. And coming live straight from the moon is Chris.
Hello! Is my signal getting there from the moon?
It seems like there's a slight satellite delay, which could get annoying for listeners.
Craig, I think there's a slight delay.
Yeah, I think this bit is getting...
Yes, you're right. It's going to get really annoying for everyone.
Anyway,
No, I'm on coffee, not tea.
Okay, that bit didn't quite work, but welcome.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello. So, how are you?
Great to be here.
Moon.
Not bad, thanks. Not bad.
Moon person.
I'm enjoying the moon. The low gravity. I weigh a lot less up here, so that's great.
Maybe I should visit. I've been meaning to lose a few pounds. Not in the pub for once. As you know, pounds.
No comment. You're the boss. I don't want to get fired.
Yeah, you wouldn't like to lose that sweet paycheck that I dole out. Anyway, speaking of losing pounds, we both spent money on watching Inhumans, Marvel's latest television project, on the big screen, the biggest screen, the IMAX screen, and it was an experience, I suppose. It was something to watch. It was definitely something to watch.
It was something to watch. It was on the big screen. It was one of the emptiest IMAX screens I have been in a long time. It wasn't that we went at some obscure time in the morning, but I think there was maybe 8 of us in there. And yeah, it's a pretty large screen in there. I don't know how many seats it is, but yeah.
It might have been less well attended than Independence Day 2's midnight screening, and that was pretty badly attended. I was, of course, one of them, but it was pretty dead. Although, to be fair, Cineworld, our local cinema, for those who don't know, could have actually shown a trailer at some point prior to its release. That might have boosted, some kind of interest. Might have created some anticipation.
Yeah, I've got to say, I mean, quite a few of the people that I spoke to when they asked, what, are you doing anything tonight or whatever, and I said, yeah, I'm going to go and see the Inhumans on IMAX. They went, the what? And, I then spent about 5 minutes explaining everything to them. And it's one of those ones that hasn't seemed to have been advertised very well. There was a little bit of a flurry around about Comic-Con when they did the trailer and they did a little sort of round panel type thing and released a little bit of footage, but it's not had that much of a buzz about it. It's not got people excited. There's more people talking about Thor and things that are a lot further off. Defenders had quite a big buzz before it came out, whereas this seems to be on the quiet. I don't know whether it's because there doesn't seem to be a big UK distributor for it, for TV, or if there is someone that's going to have it on TV, they're keeping it very quiet up until now.
Well, the thing about it is, it's funny you mentioned Defenders, because that's one thing I did see a trailer for in the cinema, but I didn't see the trailer for the thing that was appearing in the cinema. And I think if you'd slapped the Marvel logo on it, obviously, as they would have for a cinematic trailer for something that's going to be in cinemas for like a week or two, people might have went to see it because, Marvel creates its own buzz in that sense. It's a Marvel thing, better go watch this. Don't want to miss anything. But no marketing whatsoever.
Even my friends that are sort of casual Marvel fans didn't really know much about it. So it was one of those. I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't over the top about it when I came out. It's one of those difficult ones to review and talk about where it wasn't great, it wasn't terrible, it was just a bit...
Yeah, I find it quite tough to
Left
review.
me feeling a bit damp like the weather when I came out.
Yeah. I mean, I found it quite tough to review myself. I ended up getting it done, but the issue with it was I wasn't sure whether to treat it like a film or a TV episode, and ultimately I treated it like a TV episode because that's what it is. And yeah, I was pretty underwhelmed because, you know, it didn't do anything to kind of leap out at me and justify its existence. But I also have to bear in mind that it is a TV show, and anybody expecting, you know, Age of Ultron type spectacle just ain't going to get it. But then some kind of spectacle would have been nice. You know, not expecting Age of Ultron levels of stuff, but, you know, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. managed to deliver an exciting action scene or two now and again, and, you know, you've got to imagine the budgets has to be pretty similar. This may have even had more with the IMAX collaboration. Who knows?
It has a feeling that they've spent money on things like sets, some of the costume and stuff. Definitely, there are odd bits of CGI that actually look quite neat in this. That aren't too clunky. So yeah, it would have been good for them to have put a big set piece, I suppose, in the opening couple of episodes because they knew it was getting the cinematic release. But whether that was a late addition or that was always the plan to put the first 2 episodes on the big screen, I don't know.
Yeah, it did change pretty heavily. It was on Marvel's film slate for quite a while. But then they took it off and decided to replace it with a TV show, which I thought would have been more interesting because, you know, I think superhero stories generally work better on television because you just have more time. But it doesn't seem like they've risen to that challenge too much.
Yeah, I agree. It seems from the first couple of episodes that they're a little bit behind on that. But whether across the 8 episodes it is going to build up and it is going to get more intense in there, I don't know. It has the chance to do that. I don't know whether this is completely new for telly, if they've adapted what they were planning for film or not. I'd be really interested to know at what point all these processes have sort of taken out and who's dropped in and dropped out along the way to get in it here.
Yeah, how did this come to be? It would be interesting. So I think we've said about all we can say without launching into spoiler territory. So, I mean, I'm ready to cross the threshold if you are.
I thought we were going to grab a hold of this massive dog to transport us into the spoiler area.
There's not a sound effect for that. I suppose I could put
It'll
some
just be a big dog going...
Or I could use that sound.
Rather like the Inhumans, we ran out of a sound effects budget partway through the recording of this episode.
Stay with us, listeners. We're professionals.
Yeah, totally.
Who am I kidding? There are no listeners.
Only decaf coffee today. Okay. There are no listeners, yeah.
Yeah, so shall we teleport to the spoiler section then?
Let's go for it.
Okay, we're now safe. We're free and clear to speak freely and clearly. So, the story essentially boils down to a familial feud in a way, because what you've got is Maximus, played by... Now, apologies, I'm about to butcher the guy's name, but Ewan Rion? I don't know. He was in Game of Thrones, just like everyone else in Hollywood, pretty much. So, Maximus wants to move all the Inhumans who have been living on the moon for quite some time to Earth, and his brother Black Bolt, played by Anson Mount, does not. We assume, because he can't speak. So Maximus stages a coup, and then stuff happens. On the surface, it's not a bad story. I mean, the idea of a coup that Black Bolt doesn't see coming is very Shakespearean. It's, you know, very Julius Caesar. There's betrayal just obviously in front of him, and he can't see it. But the execution of it was quite sedate and underwhelming, I thought.
Yeah, the coup. You get the hint that Maximus is displeased with the way the system's working. You get one speech above a crowd for the mines, I'm presuming, the entrance to the mines or wherever they are, after the two kids go through the ritual. And then the next thing you know, the coup's happened. It's already happened, The guards are all on his side, and that's it. So it is very... When the coup does take place, it's very quick and rapid. You can imagine, I'm presuming it's been brewing for years, is the impression that I think we're supposed to get. And he's obviously had help from people on Earth. Which is the interesting part, is who's he been collaborating with on Earth? Because it sounds like he's sabotaged that first, the opening scenes that you get in Hawaii. He's obviously sabotaged that attempt. He's set them up on purpose, in order
Hydra.
to lure them away.
Yeah. It's always Hydra. I'm going to go with
It's
Hydra.
always Hydra.
It's...
Okay, why not? Let's go Hydra.
And the thing is, I found the background stuff to be the most interesting. I mentioned in my review that the Inhumans is always kind of grand in scale, in the sense of, it's a very kind of large dysfunctional royal family, and so there's that divide. So you see their issues as being much grander than the issues we would have, but they're still relatable because they're still a family. So what you've got is essentially a brother who's not pleased with his brother and his actions, and decides to do something about it. But on the grand scale, it affects an entire community or an entire society of people. And I really liked the caste system that was in place, because there's something there. You've got this idea that we're stuck on the moon, so there has to be an upper class and there has to be a labour class. Fine. But you don't really get that sense of unrest that's supposed to be there. You're just told it exists without actually having any exploration of it. And the idea that people who go through pterogenesis, aka getting their powers through breathing in some smoke, the idea that the people that maybe get crappy powers or don't get powers at all, it's unclear, are considered lesser in society, so therefore put to work in the mines. So that bit is rife for exploration, but they don't even try, I don't think.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear more about that, or see more about that. It does appear that it's like, if they deem that your powers are a bit rubbish or they're not very visible, then they go right to the mines. We have no use of you up here. It would be interesting to sort of explore that. If that's their sort of gateway out the mines, it doesn't matter if you come from, if your mum and dad are both miners, but if you come out and you've, grown a tail, then out you go. Or is it you've grown a useful appendage, like wings? I don't know. Are some powers greater than others? Or it seems a bit weird. I mean, they talk about this genetic council quite a bit, but I don't think we've seen them up until now.
No, it's clear they'll become important in later episodes.
Or if we have seen members of that council, yeah. Yes. It seems that they're gonna crop up more.
Yeah, and yeah, all that's interesting. And for a TV show, fair enough. It's like it's only the first 2 episodes, but so you don't necessarily need to pay stuff off. But you'd think you would have to certainly outline those conflicts in the first couple of episodes. So you would need to have ideally a character who is in that side of society, who isn't, one of the privileged elite, and get the impression that, just build up the complexity. What you've got is the royal family who are essentially ignorant to the problems that are being faced below them, and I guess the people lower in society who follow their orders but don't like it. There's all that. It's all stated in dialogue, more or less, but also still not really there. And the suggestion that Maximus is only kept out of the mines because he's brother to the king, you think that would stir up resentment more than anything else.
Yeah, you would think that they would, and you do get the hint that people are, why, you're not one of us and you're not one of them either. You do get some of that in there, but I suppose he says the right things to keep them inspired and on his side and wanting to change. I do think this, I've only seen 2 episodes of it, so it's hard to kind of say, but I do think if we had had a protagonist maybe from that side, one of the 2 going through Paragenesis, perhaps even the one that the girl that got her wings, if you saw some of the opening from their point of view, have them being up at the palace because they're about to go through the ceremony, overhearing conversation, and not so much, it would explain the system a little bit better. It would explain what's going up there a little bit better, and then you can move further away from them, perhaps. But it would have been a good ground's eye view, because I think opening with the family and the privilege around the family, pretty much, obviously you've got the scene at the beginning in Hawaii, but opening with that, you don't really get an idea of what it's like for the rest of them on the moon.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to have started from that ground level rather than up the top.
Yeah, and I found the introduction to Medusa and Black Bolt to be a bit sanctimonious. She's like, can you remember a time where we weren't the royals, or we weren't king and queen? It's like, remember a time when our lives were easier than they are now? It's like, my heart bleeds for royalty, at the peak of society. It's like, you don't understand our problems. Sometimes our servants have to take days off. So there is that, but again, it doesn't play up the privilege versus lack of privilege conflict. So it's not abundantly clear that there is one, and maybe there is, and maybe it will come forth in later episodes. And I suppose Maximus does represent the other side of it, but again, he is privileged. If he just kept his mouth shut, he could have lived a pretty happy life without having to worry about anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it does make me wonder about his motivations so much. And I think because we haven't seen, and possibly there will be flashbacks and other bits and pieces from his point of view, I'm guessing, explain a lot of his decisions later on. But, like you say, if he just kept his mouth shut and got on with it, he is living the life of privilege. He is living the life that his genetics were not supposed to give him, if that's what his argument is. Yeah. He is up there in the castle, he is in a privileged position, so why is he rebelling against it? Why does he have this hate for the earth that he wants to invade?
Yeah,
it does seem a bit strange.
It's not really adequately explained as such, but I don't know. And it's possible that the rest of the episodes will flesh it out in a way that makes sense, although they haven't really built it on a strong foundation, unfortunately. But I did like Maximus. The actor does a good job. He's probably the best actor of the bunch. He's the most in tune with who his character is, I think. He does the best with the material, whereas others not quite so much.
He's very theatrical in his performance. I mean, in particular, at the end of episode 2, where he's standing on the big balcony giving his speech. Very theatrical. It could almost be taken from a piece of theatre. Like you were saying, when you're comparing it to sort of Julius Caesar and the likes. That it's a very commanding, very good performance that he gives. And I'm interested in seeing where it sort of goes in the backing to the character, because I think it'll explain a little bit more. It is only 8 episodes, but I think they seem to have the space to do it. So at least they've done it for other characters. So yeah, I do think he's one of the better ones that we've seen performance-wise so far.
Yeah. And the other side of the coin was his brother Black Bolt. What did you think of him? It's a tough job for an actor. Here's a character who doesn't speak, but you have to get across his emotions. And I think that Anson Mount does a really good job throughout. I mean, some of the execution of what he had to do wasn't very well done, so I kind of blame the direction more than his performance. But it was always pretty clear by the way he would look at someone, or his facial expression, or his body language, what Black Bolt might be thinking, and how he was reacting to things. I thought he did a good job, and you got a sense of his relationship with Medusa, even though he never spoke to her, and it was a good performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think he did a pretty good job of what he was given. I mean, it's difficult, like you say, without language to convey emotion. It's also very difficult to play a king, someone who's supposed to be reserved, very sort of insular, not showing their feelings on the surface and just giving the orders. Yeah. To then also not to be able to speak then makes it even more difficult to try and convey, because if he stands there very silent and very sullen, everyone goes, well, I've got no idea what he's thinking, he's just standing there. Whereas if he's then going over the top, very melodramatic to show emotion, then it goes far too far the other direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's sort of played it pretty well. I think he's been given some tough things to do, and what we've seen him do so far, he starts as very commanding, but then the scenes in what I'm assuming when it's all separated out will be episode 2 of him on Earth.
Yeah.
He becomes almost like a comic relief character as part of this. I know there's the odd bits of action where he's being a bit of a badass and sort of breaking Copper's hands and destroying cars when he gets punched in the back.
And briskly jogging away from danger.
Briskly jogging away from danger, looking confused at what a mobile phone is, despite the fact he's got the equivalent strapped to his wrist that he can bend and twist as well. I'm just going to walk in and I'm going to take the suit and I'm going to walk out the other door. It's very, yeah, it's a comical thing, and I don't know if that's what they were going for in the first place, but you kind of think, well, this is supposed to be the king. Maybe that's no wonder that the peasants are revolting. They're going, the guy's an idiot. He has no grip on reality whatsoever. Do you know, he keeps walking in here and he doesn't pay for anything. He doesn't know how his phone works, or I suppose he's never had to answer a phone, has he? He would destroy it when he answered. It's, I don't know. It just, part of it seemed to me like this is meant to be the guy that's got his finger on the pulse. He's in control up there. He knows all about Earth and everything because, let's face it, we're his neighbours, and he's got to keep an eye on that situation. And then he goes down there, and it seems like, well, this is very strange. This, what do they call this? A city? Don't know. I don't know if it needs some sort of narration from Black Bolt so that we can explain at that point what he's thinking, or if he's going, do you know how I'll get on here? I'll play the idiot. Everyone will love me, and I'll just walk off, and it'll be fine. Don't get me wrong, I've had a bit of a shaky entrance by standing in the middle of the freeway. However, I could get over this. I will get myself a snappy suit and get out of here. I don't know. It just seemed a bit mixed, but like you say, it's not his fault. It's what he's been given.
Yeah.
To me, it confused me a little bit, and I'm hoping to see that commanding, powerful Black Bolt come back when we see them, I presume, trying to retake the throne at some point. I look forward to sort of seeing him properly in action, because, you know, what he's managed to do so far has been very impressive, even if it has been sort of haphazard and just sort of self-defense.
Yeah, it's almost a mistake to isolate him on Earth as well, you know, because up to that point you've got Medusa there to translate his sign language or his swishies and whatever else. As soon as he gets to Earth, he's on his own, so you have a limited idea of what he's thinking, but, you know, the fish out of water stuff doesn't really work, so I think it would have been better if he'd been stuck with Medusa on Earth so that she could kind of be the sounding board for his stuff. They'll reunite pretty quickly, I would imagine, but, you know, having him on his own, I get the idea that it's supposed to be isolate them and they have to make their way back together, but, you know, pairing them up would have been fine, or pairing one or two of them up would have been fine.
Yeah, sure. Well, they basically split all of them up, so it's to show they're individually quite powerful or a force to be reckoned with, so when they all unite, and if they manage to, you know, retake the throne, then you sort of see why, you know.
Yeah. But the closest analogue to the Earth stuff versus the Atalan stuff is probably the first Thor film, you know, where you see Asgard and it works a certain way, and then Thor winds up on Earth and he's like, oh, you silly humans, you know, and that's essentially the thing, you know. Thor doesn't quite understand what it's like to be on Earth and human doesn't get the rules. And they're trying to do a similar thing with Black Bolt, but I mean, I don't like the first Thor film, but it's almost it's not done as well here as it is there.
No, it does seem like you say, it is the fish out of water thing, but it seems like if he's the king and if they've got access to all the news footage and everything, you've seen it in the first episode, they've got access to pretty much all the information that they need. So would they really be that dumbfounded by Earth when they arrive?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, they've had the ability to visit whenever they want.
Yeah.
With they can just in perpetuity drop themselves wherever they want and have a little look about.
Yeah.
So it seems a bit odd to have them in that fish out of water situation. It's not like Thor, who's come from Asgard, which is planets away. This is people that have got access to everything. I mean, I don't imagine Thor was sitting there watching daytime TV before he came over to Earth. So it does and it doesn't work at the same time. You're like, it's funny to watch, but I don't know if that's what they were going for in the first place.
Yeah.
And if it is is this going to sort of continue in a way? It will be in the future episodes. You'll see if it's got more comedic beats than that. But that's what I took from it. I didn't take it as being there is the action in there, but it's that this is just because he can't communicate with them, and he can't pay anyone at the moment. I was expecting when he did the signing in the police station, I was expecting someone to suddenly recognise and go, "Oh, it's international sign language," or and then suddenly a channel of communication would be open there, but it didn't seem so.
Maybe he speaks Inhuman sign language, which is different to human sign language.
Conveniently also known as ISL, so it's very confusing on both fronts. So it's,
I found it really interesting that they didn't reveal that Black Bolt's mute until pretty late on. Obviously, he doesn't speak for the first, 40 minutes or something like that. Or it's not revealed why he doesn't speak for at least the first 40 minutes. But they just kind of go about as if it's a normal thing. But it seems, not to me, it doesn't seem odd to me because I know the reason. But for anybody who doesn't, I can't imagine to be like, what's going on? Why isn't he speaking? Like everyone else is. And I don't really have much more to say about that. I just think it was interesting that they chose to leave it so long.
I do agree with you that if someone goes into this blind to the comics or the characters at all, they're going to wonder why he's not speaking. And I suppose you do then get him doing sign language. So, yeah, they don't know it's power related, but they do know that he can't speak.
Yeah.
I suppose, by part way through. So, it's... Yeah, there is a bit of assumed knowledge, but it's getting more like that in Marvel's content. There is a lot of things that they drop in now, which are essentially for fans of the comics or fans of previous sort of cartoons and, animated shows that a lot won't get. It seems like there is a massive rush to Google now after a lot of Marvel films to find out, what was that reference about? I know it must have been a reference to something. And the Inhumans are not as well known, though they do seem to have come to the fore more in the comics recently. They were a big part of the sort of Civil War, the recent Civil War storyline and everything, so you'd assume a lot more people will be aware of them.
Yeah, although the comic audience is a very small percentage of even the television audience, which is an even smaller percentage of the film audience. The kind of assumption that people know these characters should never be made. But I think there's a bit of a difference between, chucking in a bit of a reference here and there and then, and leaving out something fundamental to the character for so long. I mean, I think it was quite interesting that they were doing that, and they were just being like, essentially leaving people to wonder why this character was mute. Because, obviously he's a king, so, a part of being a king is having your wishes be known, and probably dealing with the public and all that stuff, which is stuff that he really can't do. But it's just quite awkwardly staged, and then the reveal of the fact that his voice is killer to, you know, to anyone around him, as lethal to anyone around him, was unintentionally hilarious. You know, where he's sitting in front of his parents and yelled "why," and then knocked them back into a wall. I know it was supposed to be dramatic and tragic, but it was just quite funny, to be honest.
What a way to become king, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose they have shown and they have now explained it, and it means that they can move on again. But I do get exactly what you're saying, that there is a bit of assumed knowledge in here, but hopefully throughout, you know, they've got 8 episodes, so maybe they're leaving some stuff out with the intention that they can explain later and sort of fill in the blanks for those that don't know, and for those that do, then it doesn't really spoil it for them.
Yeah.
Just to try and argue the other side. But I do agree with you that there is a bit now of this assumed knowledge that's going on, and I think if the show isn't that well known in the first place, to put barriers to entry in there might cause it issues down the line.
Yeah, if it hasn't caused it issues already.
Yes.
Yeah. So, moving on to Black Bolt's wife, Medusa, played by Serinda Swan. What did you think of her?
She seems like a very powerful and in-control character. It's all of this can be broken down into sort of an episode 1, episode 2 type thing. She seems to be very in control, very confident in the first episode, and by the second episode, you kind of have her on the back foot. She seems like she's had, well, you know, she's had her hair shaved. However, it seems all the power and commanding in there has just completely gone at the same time.
Yeah.
It does seem like a very different character up until, I suppose, the end of the episode, where she does sort of trick the guard, and it manages to get the upper hand over her. It does seem that she's on the back foot there without much of a plan. I'm not too sure. I don't think it's a bad performance at all. I just, once again, I think it's a bit of the writing here that isn't quite gelling the way I think it should, but to describe.
See, I would say that the performance was, well, maybe not bad, but more awkward, because, well, there was nothing there to latch onto anyway. All you find out about her is that she's a queen, has come from humble beginnings, and she can control hair. That's her superpower. That's not much to go on. And then the episode is very inconsistent with the kind of person she is. So she seems quite ferocious in things when Maximus confronts her, and then she becomes quite meek, and then she's back to kind of being semi-strong again when on Earth. So, you know, there's no real consistency there. But I do get a sense of her relationship with Black Bolt, at least, you know, because they seem to have decent chemistry. More so than anyone else, anyway. But I don't think she succeeds at injecting the regal authority into her performance that she really needs to.
Yeah, she does have, when she's performing with Black Bolt, she seems to be at her best. You do get a little bit of the background that she seems to be the only person that wasn't scared to go in and talk to him.
Yeah.
And see him after the incident. So, yeah, I did like her performance to an extent, but yeah, like you say, it seems that the character has been written very bitsy. She is what they need her to be at that particular scene,
yeah, and
that can shift as quickly as the camera angle, kind of thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future episodes.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that a lot in this podcast. I think it's like I'm trying to judge it on only 2 episodes, and it's very hard to be fair to the actors and the writers at this point, because I'm maybe not giving it the fair shout that it should.
Well, to be fair, if they haven't managed to establish their main things properly in the first 2 episodes, and you know the they've kind of failed at creating a pilot, I think, because, you know, it is important in the first episode to be like, here's our world, here's our characters, here's how it all works, and here's what upends it, and here's the premise of the show, and I don't think it necessarily manages to do that. And Medusa's a big reason, you know, why that doesn't quite work. I think as I said, she's inconsistent. And the fact that they remove one of her 2 defining traits, or 3 defining traits from her, by the end of the episode or by the middle of the episode really is a bit of a mistake, because now she's just this indefinable person who's stuck on Earth with no hair. You know, at least before she's like, yeah, she can control her hair.
Yeah, and equally, it does seem that, you know, she's now a bit meek, walking about the another fish out of water on Earth without her powers, essentially. And now, I'm assuming, going to conveniently find a newspaper article about this guy that's just been arrested and is currently sitting in a jail. You know, I do think. I think you're right. I think taking away sort of the defining factors of the character so early on kind of leaves it sitting there going, well, who is she? But I think there will be a look into her background later on.
She does know about a bus, though. She knows what a bus is, which made me laugh. You know, she's this queen of the moon, essentially, and she's like, where does this bus go? It's like, how do you know? Like,
she's lucky she found out. She's lucky she found a free tourist bus as well. I mean, you know, every time I've been, anytime I've been over to the States, I know all those tourist buses are always free. They never ask you for like $20 just to go 2 stops. It
was supposed to be free. She snuck on. She quite clearly kind of tried to appear like part of the crowd, even though she's wearing a cheap-looking purple dress.
Well, good job there was an empty seat on the bus. Yeah,
just one empty
I'm
seat.
sure I would remember that passenger getting on the bus. You know what I mean? when you as the driver, you go, I am pretty sure someone in a purple dress and wearing a lot of jewellery did not get on this bus earlier on.
Yeah. But, yeah, so she's had a haircut, which is the big drama for the episode for Medusa. She's lost her hair, which means that they can be quite cheap with not showing her abilities for the next 5 or 6 episodes until she grows her hair back for the finale somehow. It was such an obvious money-saving measure.
Growing powers.
Yeah, she's like one of those.
It does seem like one of those things that they are trying to save a bit of money with different elements that they've done. The way that they've put it. And saving the CGI on Medusa's hair seems like one of the, like you say, the really obvious steps that they've done. And I do say this quite a lot with shows. It does then sort of put you in the sort of predictable bracket where you're like, well, she's going to learn how to grow her hair out of using her abilities, or it's, you know, there is going to be some MacGuffin-y thing that by the end she's grown hair, you know?
She's going to walk past a toy shop and she's going to see that, you know, that thing you put Play-Doh inside, and when you press on it, it comes out all the little holes in the scalp. She's going to see that and be like, that's how I do it. Then you'll have a montage of her just pressing on her skull, trying to make herself grow hair. That's my prediction. And if it doesn't come true, I'll be disappointed. Although I wonder if it's just the hair on her head.
Yeah, I mean, you've got
just putting that out.
I did ask this the other day. I was like, I think you know the comics better than me, so I did ask.
Strangely, it's not ever come up. I mean, I'm of course talking about her. Yeah, eyebrows.
Also her eyebrows, of course. Eyebrows, yes, not her armpit hair.
The hairs on the back of her hand, or the back on her, on her arms that stand on end. She can't do much with them, but she can
on the back of her, or the back of her. Yep.
Let's hope we don't ask that.
Dearie me. I mean, that'll be an episode 3, surely.
You feel like that'd be a question that someone in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would ask. Possibly Hunter, if he was still there.
It would be one of those. It would be one of those, like, 2 people sitting in the sort of rec room after arresting Medusa going, I wonder if...
It would be, yeah. Who knows? Well, if... This is the podcast that isn't afraid to ask these tough questions. Although it's the podcast that can't answer them as well. For, legal reasons. So moving on to Karnak.
Answers on a postcard, please.
Answers on a postcard, yeah. Moving on to Karnak, played by another name I'm about to butcher, Ken Leung, something like that. He was rubbish, for want of a better word. I could understand, I knew what his powers were in the comics. He's supposed to be able to sense the weakness and everything and exploit it. I thought the acting was terrible, or more like the direction of his acting was terrible. Any action scene he was involved in looked painfully slow, so it didn't work. I mean, I thought the whole idea of him being able to predict or test out scenarios in his head was that, he would then, when he decides what he's going to do, it just happens like in the blink of an eye. But no, it was really slow and awkward. His power breaks as soon as he hits his head, and then he walks in circles, and yeah, he was just rubbish.
He does seem like a bit of another weird character, and his powers also seem very undefined to people that are just sort of walking in. I mean, you get that scene where he's sort of trying out different moves. Now, you presume he's able to do this all the time. He's able to predict variables and what the outcome is likely to be. And then at the moment when it would be best to analyse the situation and maybe not pick the sugary rock to put your foot on while climbing down the hill, he decides, no, I'm just going to go for it. Ends up cracking his head. It just seems a bit like, oh yeah, we've got this guy who's able to sort of not quite predict the future, but to work out what's best to do. And then he makes the shoddiest move of sort of leaping down the side of the cliff. And he's now going to be walking in circles until I presume he's then going to bump into Gorgon. I'm just going to assume that's the pairing that's going to meet up. You're going to get Medusa and Black Bolt back together, and then that pair are going to be united at some point.
Yeah.
We'll have the power of unstable predictability and a very stompy hoof. I didn't think the character seems very... He wasn't given much to do in the first place.
No.
And then he seems to be another semi-comic reliefy part at one point, because you've got the meal round the table, and he's making eyes at the waitress, and then he predicts what will happen when he goes out with the waitress.
Yeah.
I'll be infatuated with you for 2 days. I will, build up the courage to ask you out after 3 days. We'll go to dinner, and then I'll notice that you've got a really wonky smile, and then it'll really annoy me, and then we won't go out again. It was like, I can't remember what the exact lining was. It was a bit funny seeing that, but then before that, you don't even know that's the character's powers. You just think they're doing this to a waitress.
He's just an ass.
In the quarters. It's another sort of privilege position. Yeah, the guy's just an ass. He's just being a dick to this waitress, going, oh, you're making eyes at me. I would go out with you, and then I'd get fed up with you because you're ugly. Bye. And then swans off. Yeah. So, he's definitely not won me over so far, but maybe he'll do something awesome in a future episode, and that'll be it. But like you say, that the fight scene does seem a bit clunky. But then a lot of the fight scenes have seemed a little bit not great. But yeah. I suppose I'm coming off the back end of watching The Defenders, which did have a couple of really good fight sequences, very fast paced, as much as it was a lot of punching and karate. It was or kung fu moves, I suppose. And this, it did seem not that great. But once again, I think it's another one of these big screen things, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. Yeah,
and as I said, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., probably a lower budget, and they managed to pull off really cool choreography quite often. When you mentioned about him falling down and cracking his head, and I mentioned it as well, I was expecting that to be, to cut back to him just standing at the top, planning his route down and being like, well, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work, But I suppose they need to establish that his power isn't working, because that creates jeopardy, but it's kind of artificial jeopardy. And
even if it had been him doing a zip back each time, going, nope, I fell and I cracked my head. Nope, I fell and I cracked my head. If you had done it like 5-6 times, you'd seen him trying 5-6 different ways, you would go, well, the only way he was going to get down is if he cracked his head. And that would explain him taking the risk.
Yeah. Yeah, it's iffy. And I had problems with his line delivery as well. As I mentioned, his performance was just weird. It's like he was reading the lines but had no idea how they should come across. So they were just pretty passionless. So, like, scenes where he's making jokes or trying to sound threatening, it all sounds the same and it doesn't really work. And I think I blame the direction more than anything else, especially with the fight scenes, because this guy is he's an accomplished martial artist on his own. So they're clearly not managing to bring that across as a production team. I
agree. I think it's something that impacts all the characters. I mean, Gorgon is another example where it's another sort of clunkily written, or at least it's clunkily directed character, I think. He does seem like a bit of a badass, and I think I will like him by the end of the series. I'm getting that feeling, but it's another one of those ones where you're sort of going, and they're all related as well. They're all cousins. Yeah, everyone is someone else's cousin. They're all going on. My cousin, my cousin, my cousin, my cousin. Hang on, it's like how many? Yeah, I get this as the royal family, but I'm beginning to get confused about how the tree goes here. It's a very strange family tree, but Gorgon he's got hooves, and I presume he can walk in space, or was he wearing a spacesuit and his hooves when he smashed the rover?
That's a good question. Yes, a hooved spacesuit.
Yeah, but when they show the video, it doesn't seem to be in a spacesuit. It just seems to be a hoof. But maybe they've developed some sort of shielding technology that they can wear rather than a spacesuit. Yeah,
or they can just breathe on the moon. I don't know. Although that makes no sense because they are functionally humans, but they're not Inhumans. But they're Inhumans, but they're humans. So they still need to be able to breathe and stuff. Yeah. I mean, he does almost drown, for instance.
And the rover would have detected that.
Yeah.
Yes, until he's saved by his new surfer buddies.
That was the worst.
you know me. I don't understand the surfer dudes. It's, a senator. God, we've seen so many of you, man. We are bored of this already. Oh, what are you? You're one of those Inhuman guys. Yeah. We've got tons of them, mate. Tons of them. Yeah. When you want to chill out and have some beers in front of the fire with us. Hang on. It's... up on the moon, they're preparing to wage war, and if they come down, and if they were all to land on that beach with the surfer dudes, they'd just be like, oh, come on in, have some beers, what are you doing? I was like, chill, we've seen tons of you before. Oh, you've got wings and scales, cool, and you come. I don't understand. It confuses me. It's like they're setting the whole thing up to be, the humans are up against, if we land, all the humans will revolt. I'm assuming this is going to be the two sides of the argument. There's humans that are like, we don't care. We don't mind. It's fine. Variety is the spice of life kind of thing. And the others are going to be, sort of military sites going, no, this is an invasion. Let's go. But I don't understand. It kind of confused me. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of explanation later on where there's going to be a family member of the surfers who's an Inhuman or something, and then that will explain it all and tie it up in a nice little bow. But at the moment, the surfers are preparing for battle. I don't... where do you find battle surfers?
I honestly think you're giving them too much credit. I don't think there's any kind of higher-minded purpose to the surfers at all. I think it's just literally Gorgon needs to explain the plot to someone. Might as well be these guys. And it's all framed in that way. You've got this, oh, hey, guy with hoofs. You must be one of those Inhumans I've read about because, we come across these. Please tell us what's going on. Please tell us everything in the plot, and could you summarise it in a way that will possibly cater to a television audience that needs a catch-up right about now. And that's their role in the episode. And it was ridiculous, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. Or a sore hoof. or sore something. I found Gorgon pretty problematic as well. I think he was supposed to be a badass, but he's not really a badass. It just, it just falls flat again, just like everything else.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, the character that I have probably some of the most problems with is Crystal, who, we've talked about the group that are now trapped on Earth. Well, this is the one that's trapped up in the city, and I don't quite understand where they were aiming or what they're aiming with the character. I don't know what the age difference is supposed to be between her and Medusa. During the Tergenesis ceremony, you get the, Medusa, where's your sister? And I thought they were going to cut to either some rebellious sister beating about the town being a nuisance, or some young girl away with the fairies running about and playing and not being at the ceremony where she's supposed to be. And you kind of got neither. You just sort of got her in this square, sort of standing there as if, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing.
She's just ambling about in the courtyard.
I don't quite understand.
Yeah, and it was because that scene was framed.
I don't know.
Yeah, that scene was framed as, oh, Medusa, where has your sister gotten off to now? And then, she's just standing around. People are calling her princess, and then she comes back, and that was it. And there's, it's so inconsistent throughout as well. I found Isabel Cornish's performance really awkward. More than others. I suppose it's because she had a bit more screen time than everyone else. Because, she's the one that gets down with the kids, because she's the youngest. But it's very difficult to figure out what kind of person she's supposed to be, and I think she doesn't connect with the material as well. I keep saying that. Nobody connects with the material, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's a lot of themes going on here, but they do seem to be a bit disconnected from it. I mean, the fact that she is the sort of one point of contact up there now, or the one person who is on Medusa and Black Bolt's side in the castle, is going to give her a sort of pivotal role in this. And the fact that she's off to a shaky start, especially when she's been doing a lot of her performance against Maximus, it's been getting played quite well. It kind of shows her up a little bit more. The physical character-wise, is a character I don't know much about in the comics. I don't know, is she in the comics at all? Or is this one they've sort of created a little bit for the show?
She's quite famous for being the Human Torch's girlfriend in the comics for at least a little while. She joined the Fantastic Four while Sue was pregnant. And she is supposed to be this kind of naive youth, that she's sheltered because she's lived amongst Inhumans for her whole life. So when the whole world of the human race is blown open, she's fascinated by it all. And in some ways, Johnny Storm, well, it doesn't quite take advantage of that, but, there's that weird undercurrent of the fact that, she's never seen another man that she's not related to, really. So, are you exploiting that? I don't know. But she grows up a bit as time goes on, obviously, as she would have to. But my main memories of Crystal are this kind of naive and gentle girl, and this Urshan was just, I don't know what the hell she was.
Yeah, I don't know. My hope is that this, like the other characters as well, it picks up slightly. I hope, but it's not a good excuse for the first 2 episodes for the characters to be a bit clunky. I mean, my favourite character we haven't talked about yet.
Yes,
it's an obvious one. I think he's probably your favourite character as well.
The one character they nailed is Lockjaw. He looks like a giant bulldog, and he teleports, and he's a dog. So was he a dog that went through Terragenesis? I'm not sure.
I have no idea of the origins of Lockjaw, but he's my favourite character. I want a massive dog that can teleport me.
Yeah, and there was the fact and they got rid of him pretty quickly, because he's expensive. Unfortunately,
that did seem like another one of the the cost-saving measures of let's incapacitate the dog and just have stock footage of him sleeping for the rest of the series until, the end of episode 7, where he will somehow be broken free and he will bring Medusa, Black Bolt, and the assembled party back to the moon. It does seem that element.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it. I would just like a massive teleporting bulldog so that I could get to work quicker in the morning. I could have more time in bed. If I wanted to go on holiday, it would be a lot quicker. None of this sort of travelling to the airport nonsense. So, yeah.
Of course. Yeah, he'd be great. I'm reading his biography. Lockjaw was born in the island of Atalan, so there's no explanation over whether he was a normal bulldog that went through pterogenesis or not. The species is he's an inhuman bulldog, apparently. But so is there an entire race of them? What are the implications of this? Is he the last of his kind? Which is kind of upsetting if he is. But he's cool. He's brilliant. And he seems to be asleep for the next 5 or so episodes. They'll just keep cutting back to that same stock footage of him sleeping.
Yeah, I do have the feeling that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. But other than that, awesome. And he was very obedient as well. Although for some reason he decides to teleport everyone to a fair distance from one another, but still on the same island. So that's interesting. Although I wonder if he was going to the same spot and the rotation of the Earth was throwing him off. That's my theory.
Could be.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the characters, and they all feed into the story in some way or another. I mean, the coup story isn't as strong as it should be, isn't as strong as it could be, and the characters need a lot of work. I mean, the joke about Lockjaw notwithstanding, I mean, he is my favourite of the bunch, but there aren't any of them that I feel particularly invested in over the next few episodes. So that's going to be a problem. They haven't done a good job of establishing why the Inhumans should... The Inhuman royal family should thrive or survive or get out of this mess. So that's a problem. They've kind of failed to centrally establish their premise.
And there does seem to be, in my point of view, at the moment you're sort of looking and going, well, it does seem very unfair. It does seem that this group are living a life of privilege and this other are toiling down the mines with no option to get out. Once you're down the mines, that's it. You've got no way out. That's it. That's your life now. So at the moment I'm kind of like, well, that regime's got to change. So, if the royal family are supposed to be our protagonists, then I'm kind of sitting there thinking, well, I kind of don't want them to succeed then. I want revolt. I don't want Earth invaded, but I do want, change. So I'm assuming their time on Earth is going to change their points of view, and, there's going to be a nice, lovely solution by the end of it. It's either that or they're going to go back and rule with an even tighter iron fist to stop this happening again in the future. I don't know.
Or yes, they come back and Medusa says, Black Bolt has decreed that we are now a constitutional democracy. Everyone out of the mines. We'll only send people into the mines who want to work in the mines. Which is, no one. Oh no, society collapses. Problems, Yeah. Plus, speaking from where we come from a place where there is a monarchy, and they are heralded as being above us in society in terms of privilege and stuff like that. And I mean, without going too much into my politics, that's not something I necessarily agree with. I'm more a equal opportunity sort of guy, so I reject the notion that people are born better than others. So that makes it harder for me to latch on to as well.
I neither agree nor disagree with Craig's comments. Please don't have me hung, drawn and quartered or sent to the tower. Thank you.
The opinions on this podcast are purely purely those of those involved and don't represent the organisation of Kneel Before Blog as a whole. Yeah, no.
Can you podcast from your chambers at the Tower of London, Craig?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. The Wi-Fi is amazing. Plus, 3 different copies of The Doctor occasionally run in. So that's handy. I don't know, what am I even saying? But, the idea of royalty is always going to be a difficult one. So if the royal family are going to be your protagonists, then the idea that they are somehow better than those beneath them in the social classes, it's a difficult sell, and I don't think they sell it. I don't think they, not that there's a lack of humility, but there's also, they don't explore the fact that these people might be humble in some way. It's like the idea, they just seem to accept the fact that people are beneath them and they're okay with it. So, yeah, their time on Earth has to help them see things differently, I suppose. The idea that, people arise through society on Earth through achievement, at least to some degree, rather than birthright, I suppose, would be the other option. Although there are birthright stuff, but that's a separate issue. Yeah, and Medusa would be a good one to do that, because she came from that other side of the coin. She understood what it was like to be lesser in society until she married Black Bolt, and then suddenly she went from being bottom of the food chain to top of the food chain. Crystal as well. So
I thought, yeah, I mean, you do get the line from Maximus saying, "Have you not forgotten where you came from?" And I suppose that is what Medusa's time on Earth is. It is resembling. I think the more and more we discuss it, the more it is resembling Thor, where by being on Earth, they're going to experience a different kind of life, and at this point, they're then going to go back a changed person, going, well, I have learnt the error of my ways. Like you say, we're now a democracy, and everyone can come out of the mines because we're now going to use our teleporting dog to bring up all the resources we need from Earth without distributing the status quo. There you go. Everyone's happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Who knows? Next 6 episodes might be much better now that they've established nothing. They can start establishing something. I don't know. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about story and characters. I think we've just covered all the bases and repeated all the bases. So on to visuals. Atalan was pretty impressive visually. Obviously, it's not Age of Ultron style presentation. It's not the same as one of your big $200 million tentpole Marvel movies. It's a TV show that's been blown up for IMAX and filmed in IMAX, but at the end of the day, still a TV show. Looks impressive enough. The CGI on the hair works for me. You don't see it for much. Lockjaw looks really good. The action scenes are crap, but visually it's well designed. Some of the costume is a bit off. Whereas Crystal's costume is really good, really comic accurate. Medusa's looks weird, and Black Bolt just looks like something you would see on X-Men, the movies. The early movies. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think the early effect shots you get showing the city, and when it sort of pans from the destroyed rover and you see the crater and then it zooms out on Earth and everything, I think is pretty neat. The layout of the city, it's an interesting take on it. It is, literal levels. A bit like, to be honest, a bit like we're both in Edinburgh, another city where the posh lived above the poor. You literally go down levels in Edinburgh and it gets deeper and darker and more miserable the further down you go, especially when you look at it, in the past.
Yeah.
It was people were living in caves underneath the city that was above, and you could do tours of it. It is brutal the way it's built up, and it is, similar in that way. If anything, it's slightly glossier on the moon, but it's... But yeah, it's the CGI for Lockjaw looked good. The CGI for Medusa's hair looked pretty impressive at the beginning. However, there was a couple of very clunky effect shots a little bit later on, and they've solved the problem with that CGI. Later and a lot of the ones that they have left on Earth with their powers are not too special effects heavy. So that should save them. I like the idea of it being in Hawaii on a nice tropical island. It's a nice different setting. It wasn't like dropping them into the middle of New York, which is good. It's nice for a little change. After seeing lots of the Marvel stuff being sort of New York or Boston or whatever. Don't get me wrong, it's still going to have a lot of city scenes in it, but it makes a pleasant change. Like that.
But
visually.
it's people with Hawaiian shirts, and that's where it's different.
Yes.
It's an important
Surfboards and Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah, it's an important difference. I really liked Lockjaw's teleport effect, that just the way, they sort of, they're almost torn apart and reassembled. I liked that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, visually, so it's fine. It looks like a TV show. It looks, the production value resembles, I'm going to keep saying this, it resembles Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They have this similar resources. So what you get is you get the big effect shot in an episode, so to speak, and then not much else, which is fine, because it isn't a $200 million film. So, manage your expectations in that regard. Although, I do think they could have used IMAX a bit better. If you're putting your pilot in IMAX, give us a decent bit of spectacle to justify it, rather than just, this could easily be shown on TV with a TV budget and people would be underwhelmed with that. If you're going to introduce your TV show in IMAX, give it something to really pop. Something that can be like, yeah, okay, now I see why you've done this.
I think that's where I may have stepped wrong in this by going to see it at IMAX. As much as it was nice seeing it on a big screen and everything, I think it amplified some of the flaws to me seeing it in a cinema setting. Because when you sit in a cinema seat, in a proper cinema, and you're sitting there, you're expecting cinema style stuff. Even if in your head, you're like, I'm watching a TV show. On the screen, you're watching a movie. It is that size. And I think this is where it kind of fell apart a little bit. It does have effect shots and it does have action. However, it's very small TV scale because that's what it's intended to go on in the end, which makes the decision to put it on IMAX a bit strange. Cinema release maybe, but IMAX, why? Yes, there are some big wide shots of the island. There's some, the big sort of sweeping shots coming from the moon going over to the Earth are pretty impressive. But at the end of the day, that's like 2, 3, 4 shots maybe out of 2 episodes worth. And I would have thought if they went, do you know what, this needs to launch it, this needs to be shown on IMAX because look at the spectacle. However, the spectacle to an extent wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of amplified my disappointment in it slightly, whereas if I'd watched this on telly, I might not have been as down on it as I am. I think it's kind of blown it blown it IMAX big for me, how much I didn't enjoy some of the stuff in these opening episodes.
Yeah, I get the feeling that shot you were talking about, zooming into the moon and zooming in between the moon and Earth and all that stuff. I get the feeling that that's stock footage that will be used in the coming episodes. It's a bit like with,
yes.
When in the pilot for instance, comes straight to mind, Star Trek The Next Generation, how you get to see the Enterprise from every conceivable angle because they paid ILM to do the effects for the pilot and they needed stock footage to go for the next 7 years, so you've got footage of the Enterprise flying through space for 7 years, things like that. So they spend a bit more money there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see those same tracking shots of the moon appear in the coming episodes, which is fine. It's a TV show, like we both watched The Flash, and how many times have we seen repetition of his running effect? Because it's just cheaper to use the one that already works, that already looks good. It's fine.
Yeah, I do think there's going to be a lot of reused stuff in there, and it just I hope that it improves somewhat, but it does seem like a lot of the decisions in these opening episodes have been made so that they can make it cheaper in future episodes. For all the middle episodes up until the final, we're not going to have this character, that character, we're not going to have Medusa's hair, we're not going to have... they seem to just be going down the list of what shots here are very expensive, what are the things that cost too much to put on screen. And I have the feeling that if you didn't want to do that, then why would you pick this as a TV show? Why would you pick it as a thing if you're not going to commit the budget to it? Then how are you going to do it? And it's going to be a similar problem that a lot of the sort of X-Men universe-based TV shows that are sort of popping up are going to have down the line.
Yeah.
effect shots of humans. I mean, you have a lot of heroes that at the moment are not particularly heroic or jumping about doing anything. So, but it's almost like, despite the fact we've kind of watched 2 episodes, we're still waiting for it to kick in.
Yeah.
Because the only stakes and the only sort of big push that we've got at the moment is to get them back on the throne. And at the moment, I don't think either of us are convinced that the pair of them should be sitting on the throne. So it's you're sitting thinking, well, what am I watching for? There is a villain, but the villain hasn't been too brutal up until now, apart from the fact he wants to kill the people that were previously on the throne. However, all the subjects are still going about their business and appear to be all right with it at the moment. Yeah. I'm assuming that's going to change at some point so that we swing more in the Black Bolt and Medusa's favour. But I'm finding it difficult to kind of describe what I'm disappointed about today. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a quarter of the way through the series. I feel like there should be more momentum than there is, and there isn't very much at the moment. But I will keep watching because I'm a glutton for punishment. I'll watch the other 6, I'll review the other 6, and I will see what I think. I think there is a good story in there. I just don't think it's quite there yet. I don't know. So, just quickly, obviously this is part of the ever-growing Marvel Cinematic Universe, this thing that is so big that I can barely keep up with it, and I love this stuff. There's very little to connect it to the rest of the MCU at this point. There are some references to Inhumans appearing across the globe, which does sort of reference Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Sort of. Because it doesn't explain. It talks about contaminating the water supply as well. Something has contaminated their water supply, or their fish oil supply, of course.
Yeah. There's very limited scenes. I mean, I wasn't paying enough attention to it. There wasn't anything that was very obvious and jumped out at me. There was a couple of scenes where they're looking at TV screens, and I'm going to assume I wasn't quick enough to catch, or I didn't spot some of the stuff on the TV screens. And it seems to tie in a little bit with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which, to be fair to them, they've kind of got to tie in a bit, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did a whole season pretty much dedicated to Inhumans and the discovery of Inhumans.
Yeah, although interestingly, they seem to just come up with a name on their own in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but in this show they identify as Inhumans, and they've always identified as Inhumans. So, I don't know. It's a minor niggle, that's nitpicking, whatever. It's a big universe, it's hard to keep track of everything. The people producing this show probably didn't even watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., let's be honest, but the showrunner did say he's open to a crossover at some point, so that could happen. Yay, I think. Maybe.
You'd think it would be worthwhile them doing a token crossover, or a token character popping up, or it would make sense almost to have them both trying to find the same Inhuman at some point, or I don't know. It's something that they could definitely tie in. I'm not expecting any grand overture to the main MCU. I might be surprised, but I think I was chatting about this the other day to someone, probably yourself, that the sort of film universe and the TV universe seem to grow slightly distant all the time, with only sort of fleeting mentions and odd bits and pieces turning up. It might be the logo on a truck, or on a box in the background, or something that sort of ties it all in, but I don't think you're wanting everything to be crashing too far together. No,
definitely not. Just some kind of hint here and there is enough for me, usually. They might delve more into why are these Inhumans coming up, apart from the fact they're in these fish oil tablets, which, amuses me no end. It's like, it's almost like they're, you mean they're using fish oil tablets to become Inhumans? It's like, oh, the Inhumanity. Oh. I don't know, that was a bad joke. But I don't know, it's because the thing about Terrigenesis is it's established both in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in here that it's a sacred thing. It's something that is it earned? I mean, it's not clear in this, actually, whether people have to earn it on Attilan or not, or whether they just achieve it at a certain age or whatever. But the idea is, it's definitely a sacred thing that happens. So the idea that people are kind of accidentally becoming inhuman without being prepared for it could be quite offensive to them. And you saw from the splintered group of Inhumans in season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Yeah, season 2. You know, when you... Is it 3? Yeah, it's 2. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But when you see the splinter group of Inhumans at the end of that season... the idea is that they are offended by the fact that humans are, you know, terrigenesising earlier than they should be. Or when they haven't earned it or whatever. So.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like something that they will touch on later. I mean, there was a fleeting mention of it, and I thought it would have had more of an impact, because you do get the impression in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that this is sort of sacrilege, that people wait years and years and study and then get approved to go through the whole process. And now it's just happening willy-nilly to anyone that's got these fish oil tablets or, you know, eating any of the fish that have come out from that particular area. So, yeah, I don't know if it's something that is earned. You don't know. You've only seen the ceremony so far. You've not seen the choosing, and they've mentioned this genetic council so many times that I'm assuming they're going to delve more into that later as well. Yeah,
but I don't know. There's still 6 episodes. I'm cautiously optimistic. Apparently there are extra scenes in the television aired version whenever that comes on. No, it comes on like the 29th of September, I believe. Yes, Friday the 29th of September it airs on ABC. And there's going to be extra scenes, so that means I'll probably watch this again just when it comes on TV, just to see how it holds up on a second viewing. You know, I'm not paying to go see it again, but I will watch it when it's available to be watched. You know, I'll book my flights now, go over to the US and watch it.
There must be a cheaper way for you to do that. maybe by calling on your trusty hound.
That's it. My teleporting dog means that I'll never miss television ever again. Maybe there's a teleporting cat and it takes you wherever it wants. You know, you never go where you want to go. It just takes you wherever. Or nowhere. Probably nowhere. So yeah, I don't really have much else to add about Inhumans. I think we've savaged it enough for one night, certainly, and we can maybe do another roundup when the season finishes, just to see how they pull this thing off.
Yeah, it will be interesting to find out. I mean, I'm having a look at the moment, and there's no UK broadcaster for it yet. And seeing how the reviews and things have gone following its IMAX release, I don't know whether a broadcaster's been sitting going, we'll just wait and see what the critics say, and if it gets panned, I don't think it's gonna get picked up. So there might be a lot of people on that plane. You might need to book your seats early, Craig.
That's it. Well, based on the IMAX turnout, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll be us and the 6 other people.
Yeah. 29th of September. So that's that. Essentially, do you have anything else to close off on?
I want a teleporting dog.
I also want a teleporting dog, although walking it would be a nightmare. I don't know. That's what I'm going to leave us on. So, as always, thanks for coming live from the moon. Judging by the time delay that we seem to have been experiencing, you must be on the moon, or I must be on the moon.
The time delay is terrible, you're right.
So, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
So, that was our discussion of Marvel's The Inhumans. Thanks to YouTuber nstens1117 for the supplied music. As always, if you like what you heard, then please subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. And please join us on the next Kneel Before Pod.